News dozen last respects are being paid to the BSF Jawans who were killed in Pakistani firing on Monday. The deceased have been identified as Constable Devinder Kumar, who was at the Khura post in Samba Sector. Pakistan resumed its shelling at border posts and targeted civilian areas along the international border. The live visuals that we're getting you from Jammu, BSF Jawan being honoured. Remember, Indian Jawans have been killed in Pakistani shelling. Relentless fire from the Pakistani side has been reported since the 31st of December. Pakistani troops have been firing civilian areas as well. More than 5,000 people have been forced to flee their homes. Pictures on your screens are from Jammu, where a BSF Jawan who was martyred along the international border is... his last rites are being carried out. Respects being paid to the BSF Jawan by officers. Tensions along the international border being escalated by Pakistan. More than 5,000 people have been forced to flee their homes after civilian areas also came under fire. Let's get in a word from India Today's Rahul Kawal, who's with us on the phone line from Jammu. Rahul, take us through what's happening there.
Simi, we are currently at the frontier headquarters of the Border Security Force, where the wreath-laying ceremony of Jawan Devinder Singh from Aligarh, who was martyred in BSF in Ranger mortar firing yesterday, is currently on. His colleagues, soldiers he fought with, senior officers of the Border Security Force, currently paying their homage and tribute to the Constable Devinder Singh. And a very emotional, a very touching moment this for all the BSF soldiers and officers who are deployed over here. The firing, we're told, from about 2 a.m. last night has ceased. There hasn't been any major firing, but till late in the evening, Simi, there was a heavy amount of firing that was taking place in several border posts of the international boundary, and we're told that about 7,000 people have been evacuated from different villages. They've been brought to shelters, temporary shelters that have been set up about a few kilometers away from the international boundary, away from mortar firing, away, so that they're at a safe distance from where this firing has been taking place. Some of the soldiers we've been speaking to say they're ready for any kind of eventuality, for any kind of response. In fact, they've been saying that Pakistan has been constantly upping the ante here along the international boundary, as opposed to allowing the situation to cease. They're saying that their instructions are not to open fire, not to begin fire, but however, if there is firing from the Pakistani side, then to retaliate with a heavy response. Also, in just a few moments from now, Pathak, who's the Director General of the Border Security Force, will be arriving here at the frontier headquarters to pay his homage to Constable Devinder Singh. He came from Aligarh. We're told that he was martyred when shrapnels from a mortar came and hit him yesterday in the Samba Sector. And his wreath-laying ceremony currently on, grim faces in a mark of remembrance, solemn tribute to the martyr who died here, Simi.
Right, and Rahul, BSF Jawans who are present there, they've been really bravely fighting on the front, not just responding to firing from the Pakistani side, also helping in the evacuation process. We believe that almost 5,000 people have been evacuated. BSF Jawans and Army Jawans helping in the evacuation process, also getting people in their vehicles to cross over into safer territory.
That's correct, Simi, but the one big concern that the villagers have is about rehabilitating their broken houses because of the intense amount of mortar fire that's taking place. And mortar is very heavy weaponry, as you know. Their houses have been destroyed. There were some unexploded shells that were lying around. The army then came in with their ordnance units and they blasted those houses where these unexploded shells were lying. So the villagers very concerned about rebuilding their houses and finding a way of getting their lives back on track. As of of now there's a lot of anger, and some of the villagers our crews have been speaking to say that it's time to teach Pakistan a lesson. There's a lot of anger, seething rage over why their life is being disrupted. Remember, this is the international boundary. This is not the line of control. This is not demarked. This is very clearly defined. The BSF DG has just arrived over here. He's come in from, let me just see if we can walk across and show you images of Mr. Pathak, the Director General of the Border Security Force, now arriving at the Samba headquarters. He will then be heading from here, Simi, for some of the border outposts to actually see what his Jawans on the ground are having to deal with. I spoke to him yesterday. I had a long conversation with him. He seems to be very clear that we're not going to open fire. However, if there is any kind of escalation or any kind of open fire from the Pakistani side, there will be a huge response from the Indian side. Remember, during the UPA regime, Simi, the response was different. The response was calibrated. The response was equal to the provocation. Now what we're seeing is disproportionate response. So if there is an open fire from the Pakistani side, there is a huge and disproportionate fire from the Indian side. The attempt really is to try and teach Pakistan and the Rangers on the other side a lesson. This is Rajiv Sharma, the Inspector General of the Border Security Force, who's in charge of operations in Jammu, in the Jammu region. You see him on your screen right now. I also want to bring in two of my colleagues. Ashwini Kumar, who's our Bureau Chief in Jammu, and Sujaul Haq Thakur, who's travelled from Srinagar and has been extensively going across in all the areas where the firing has been taking place. Suja, I'll start with you. You were at a bout border outpost last night. Give our viewers a sense of what you saw and the mood amongst the BSF soldiers and the villagers.
Well, Rahul, it's very tense. If you can remember how we've been reporting it from various villages yesterday, throughout the night till at least 2 p.m. we were around those places which were directly being hit by the Pakistani shells, and it's very, very tense. Till morning we've been getting reports that more than 5,000 people were evacuated from their villages, and continuously the administration is trying to do that. And as far as the BSF soldiers are concerned, they're also living a very tense and tough life, and probably this is something that the top officials would also be able to explain us. Some of them told us that it's very difficult for them to continuously live in an atmosphere where shells are going on. Though their morale is up, but the fact that people are dying, we saw one of the soldiers martyred. Clearly, something clearly goes on to their minds every time some news like this comes across.
Ashwini, what's been the situation for the last 4 or 5 hours along the international boundary? We're told that since about 2 a.m. things have been quiet.
Yes, Rahul, after yesterday shelling and firing in which one of the BSF soldiers, Davinder Singh, martyred himself for the sake of the country, and there was some intermittent firing from the Pakistani side. We were in the Bangalore area in Samba Sector, and most of the villagers, they have left the villages, and whole of the village is under target, and around 5,000 to 6,000 people from Samba and Kathua district, they have been shifted to the safer places, but there are some skeleton people inside the bunkers. They are taking shelters because of the Pakistani shelling, and once the shelling is there, and there are casualties are there also, and till now we have lost 2 BSF Jawans, and some people are also injured in the firing and shelling.
Now the Director General of the Border Security Force, Mr. Pathak, heading today the Wreath on the dead body of Constable Devinder Singh. This, of course, a very difficult moment for Pathak as he leads his troops, keeps their morale, their chin up, but also ensures that the job that his boys need to do along the international boundary doesn't suffer in any way, and that really is his key task. He's here to assess troop deployment, he's here to assess current tactics, he's here to understand what the Pakistani Rangers are up to and ensure that his boys give adequate response to the provocations that are coming from the Pakistani side, Simi.
Absolutely, Rahul, and as you've been saying, that the response from the BSF has been tougher as opposed to what we saw under the UPA regime. Jawans being asked to respond not just in kind, but to show Pakistan that India is capable of a stronger response. We're also being told that India retaliated after 26 of the BSF posts came under fire from the Pakistani side.
Well, that's absolutely clear, and some of the military strategists that we've been speaking to, Sini, are now raising questions on whether mere mortar fire is enough as far as a response is concerned. They're saying that if India does need to teach Pakistan a lesson, which is what Manohar Parrikar spoke about, then you need to escalate this from just mere mortar firing to actually taking it to the next level and bringing it in the range of artillery firing. The reason for that is... Okay. Let's just for a moment listen in and then we'll continue our commentary.
Yes, I can hear.
God! God! Surrounding! God!
In fact, Simi, the point that I was making was that some of the officers that we spoke to, military strategists, actually feel that if Manohar Parrikar and the Ministry of Defence and the Prime Minister is serious about teaching Pakistan a lesson, those are the words that they used, then mere mortar fire is not enough. And let me explain why. The reason is that mortar fire usually cannot penetrate built-up defences that the Pakistani army and the Rangers have built on the other side of the LOC and the international boundary. The way to do that is through artillery firing, which is far more precise in nature and can do far more damage, and that they believe at a time when the Pakistani army and Rangers are badly stretched given their operations in the Northwest Frontier province. If the intent of the Indian government is to teach Pakistan a lesson, then that is the way to do it. So clearly all those questions are something that the BSF DG and others in the Ministry of Home Affairs, the Prime Minister's office, the National Security Advisor will have to delve on. What is it that is going on in the mind of Pakistan? Why is it that just before President Obama's visit to India, escalations are being seen along the international boundary, which is a very clearly demarcated boundary agreed upon by both countries, not the line of control? And that is something which the BSF is looking at very, very seriously, and the situation and the strategy constantly evolving in response, Simi.
Absolutely, Rahul, and keeping up the morale of the Jawans is a huge challenge that the leadership will have to deal with. Right now, we saw the chief of the BSF also come, the DG come and pay his last disputes with the Jawan. The body of the soldier who was martyred in Pakistani firing being carried away now. Rahul, this is a huge challenge at a time like this when BSF Jawans are fighting with the Pakistani troops under severe conditions, extremely cold, also facing relentless fire. Keeping up the morale of the men on the ground is a huge challenge.
Absolutely, you just have to see the grim faces here, some moist eyes, some people who worked and served with Constable Devinder Singh, and others who feel, who feel the pain, who feel the loss. Each one of these soldiers realizes that today it is Devinder Singh, tomorrow it could be any of them, and that is what makes this such a solemn moment. As far as the morale is concerned, what I've seen on past trips to the line of control, the international boundary, is that each time there is a death suffered. This happened in the 9th Battalion of the Border Security Forces. A huge amount of rage, a huge amount of anger amongst everyone in that unit, amongst the officers, amongst the Jawans, and the attempt and the intent always is to try and teach the enemy a lesson, and that's something that the DG, the IG and other officers need to keep an eye on. The fact that the response has to be calibrated, the response has to be proportionate, the response has to be strategic. It cannot be that you open your guns in response in anger and that be the way to respond. This is something that the officers constantly need to speak to the soldiers about. The senior officers need to speak to their juniors to ensure that the situation doesn't go out of control, and which is what the BSF DG is here for.
All right, we'll try and reconnect with Rahul Kawal, who's taking us through developments on the ground. The pictures on your screens that we're getting you from the BSF headquarters in Samba, where BSF Jawan Devinder Singh was being paid a tribute by BSF Jawans at a wreath-laying ceremony. The DG of BSF also paid tribute to the martyred soldier. As Rahul Kawal was explaining to us, keeping up the morale of soldiers on the ground is a huge challenge for senior officers who constantly have to deal with men who are seeing their colleagues being killed in relentless Pakistani fire. Remember, Pakistan has been escalating tensions not just along the line of control but also the international border. What we're seeing this time is that civilian areas are continuously being targeted by Pakistani Rangers. The responsibility of the BSF has in fact expanded. They're not just responding to Pak firing, but they're also helping in the evacuation process. We're being told that close to 5,000 villagers have been evacuated from border areas.